Hello everyone, my name is Francis Donald and I'd like to welcome you to this 23rd session in an ongoing series of webinars on sacred number and geometry. First 22 sessions are available on makara.us. Have any questions about the GoToMeeting interface? Feel free to text VL, and if you'd like to add your name to the list of readers, just raise your digital hand. And this session has a lot of reading in the beginning of it. There's a lot of DK quotes. So it'd be great if you would jump in there and add your name to the list of readers. Okay, during the last webinar, we considered the number 8 and analyzed the octahedron, here shown as the dual of the cube. Octahedron is the third of 5 Platonic solids. You may remember that we looked at the idea of, okay, hang on a second, I'm going to turn off this talking head. Okay, yeah. So we looked at the idea of the sphere being the monad, the octahedron is representing the soul, and the cube as the form aspect of the personality. Today, we'll look at the number 9. Among the many references to specific numbers in DK's works, there are just a handful that directly address a number's inherent qualities. There's lots of references to, all the different types of groups that are sevenfold or threefold, but these references that directly address a number's inherent qualities are rare and precious. The following quote is that reference for the number 9. So let's start you right off with, let's get a reader in here for this quote from A Treatise on Cosmic Fire.
Anne, please go ahead.
Okay. It should ever be borne in mind that 7 is the number which governs the evolution of substance and of form building in the solar system, but that 9 is the number governing the development of consciousness within that form of the psyche. This is seen in the sevenfold display of logoic life through the planetary scheme and the ninefold nature of the egoic unfoldment.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, so 9 is essentially a threefold number, demonstrating as 3 times 3. DK says, in this present system, the result of evolution as far as the etheric body is concerned will be the contact established between all 3 points of each triangle, making a ninefold contact and a ninefold flow of energy. Now, to keep in mind that whereas 7 deals with the form aspect, 9 always deals in terms of the energy aspect, the energetic, the subjective aspect. And this is true of planetary as well as etheric bodies. We also see this 3 times 3 form of energy distribution demonstrated by the 9 petals of the egoic lotus, which unfold in 3 tiers of 3 petals. Both the tiers and petals progress through the 3 rays of knowledge, love, and sacrifice. DK says, in this threefold manifestation, there is a ninefold unfoldment. The ascending path through the petals leads to synthesis with the solar angel and ultimately opens, by means of the 3 inner petals, a direct channel to the monad. DK says, the form approximates the subjective demand placed on it, and after being consciously directed and manipulated, is finally discarded. This is the goal for the Logos, as it is for man. This marks the final liberation of a human being, of a heavenly man, and of a solar Logos. The egoic lotus is so central to the ancient wisdom teachings given us by TK that it's worth taking a look at this extended quote from A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, which describes the many ways that the egoic lotus can be understood. We'll need 2 readers for this section. The first reader will read these 2 points, and then the second will read, when the screen changes, we'll read the second 2 points. So choose 2 readers now. And
Okay, the 2 readers will be Malia first, and then Clesia.
Great. Okay, Malia. Go ahead, Malia.
All right, I'm unmuted. Okay, as 9 vibrations emanating from a central point, which in its pulsation or radiations produces 3 major vibrations of great force, pursuing a circular activity around the center.
Okay, hold on just a second. We're describing now the egoic lotus, okay, which is the form aspect of the soul. Okay, go ahead with the 9 vibrations.
The 9 vibrations pursue a diagonal path until they reach the periphery of the egoic sphere of influence. At this point, they swing around, thus forming, thus forming the well-known spheroidal form of the causal body. As 9 petals of a lotus radiating from a common center and hiding within themselves 3 central petals which conceal a central point of fire. The radiations from the tip of each petal are those which cause the illusion of a spheroidal shape.
Thank you. Okay, Clesia.
Hello.
Go ahead.
As 9 spokes of a wheel converging towards a central hub, which is in...
Clesia, could you move a bit closer to your microphone, please?
Okay. This better?
Yes.
Hello?
Hi, it's much better.
Okay. Shall I start again?
Yes.
As 9 spokes of a wheel converging towards a central hub, which is in itself threefold, and which hides the central energy or dynamo of force, the generator of all activity. As 9 types of energy which produces definite emanations from a threefold unit, again itself and outgoing from a central unit of force.
Thank you. So these are all ways of looking at the what's called the egoic lotus, but as you can see, the lotus is just one of the many ways that it can be perceived. My guess is that that one's ray type probably affects the way this configuration that's called an egoic lotus appears to you once that eye of vision is open. Okay, thank you, readers. The egoic lotus demonstrates another inherent quality of the number 9. As the number of greatest plurality, 9 inevitably leads back to the unity of the monad. 9 becomes 10, which reduces to 1. The tail of the Ouroboros is held by its mouth. And yet that 10 is a new 1, the initiator of a new cycle. This is demonstrated by the spiral, the method of motion in the solar system. In this way, 7 is to 8, the new octave, which DK tells us governs the evolution of substance and of form building in the solar system, as 9 is to 10 in the development of consciousness. This is a primary aspect of the number 9 that you need to take from this. That 9 is subjective and deals with consciousness, whereas 7 and 9 leads to 10, just as 7 leads to 8, the octave, which is concerned with the form aspect. So 7, 9, and 10 are all stages in the synthesizing process that demonstrates in our solar system. DK says, oh, let's get a reader for this.
Okay. Yvonne, please go ahead.
Objective development is 7-fold in evolution and in time, 9-fold during obscuration, and 10-fold at dissolution. Again, the numerical significance of the numbers must be studied. This time they are hid in the number 10, or 3 cycles of 3 lesser periods, each making 9 and 1 synthesizing period, leading up to the consummation of 1 period within the greater cycle. This is signified by the 10 of relative perfection.
Thank you, Yvonne. Okay, we'll take a closer look at this, at DK's tabulation on synthesis during our session on the number 10, which is the next session. But for now, just note that 9 is associated with obscuration, or the subjective side of manifestation. This includes the quality of gestation. Virgo is represented by the 9th Tarot Arcana, and it carries the Christ child for 9 months. This is that quality of gestation. DK says, he describes his 3 phases here. Virgo, or gestation, governing 9 signs from Virgo to Capricorn, including Virgo. Capricorn stands for labor, which are the 3 signs from Capricorn to Pisces, and this carries the disciple to the 3rd initiation. And Pisces is the sign of birth, appearance of the world Savior. So at this point, we're looking at those 9 months of gestation, another quality of the number 9. So if we consider the initiations involved, we see that there is a direct correlation between the 9 petals of the egoic lotus and the 9 signs of the Virgoan gestation, as well as between the 3 hidden inner petals of the lotus and the 3 signs of labor. DK tells us that 9 is the number governing initiation. He says, the relation of Virgo to 8 signs has therefore a definite bearing on these matters, the initiations. And the 9 united potencies play their part in developing the Christ life in the individual and in the mass of men. So if this phrase 9 united potencies sounds familiar, it may be because it forms part of the very first of the introductory postulates in a treatise on cosmic fire, which reads, let's get a reader for this.
Okay. Scott, please go ahead. Thank you.
This triple solar system can be described in terms of 3 aspects: electric fire, or spirit; first person, father, life; will, purpose, positive energy; solar fire, or soul; second person, sun, consciousness, love, wisdom, equilibrized energy; fire by friction, or body, or matter; third person, Holy Spirit, form, active intelligence, energy. Each of these 3 is also triple in manifestation, making therefore A, the 9 potencies or emanations; B, the 9 sephiroth; C, the 9 causes of initiation.
Thanks, Scott. When DK says each of these 3 is also triple in manifestation, it would seem, based on the list that follows, that there are 3 potencies, 3 sephiroth, and 3 causes of initiation associated with each of divinity. At any rate, he follows this list of 3 9s with this all-important statement. These 3 aspects of the whole are present in every form. For a human being, this would be monad, soul, and personality, but it also suggests that the potencies, sephiroth, and causes of initiation are inherent, or at least available to, every unit of consciousness. So, let's take a look at these 3 sets of 9.
Francis.
The potency. Yep.
Sorry, you have a comment here from Malia. She says 2016 is a 9 year, as is 2025, with 9 years between them. We truly live in interesting times.
Thank you so much for that. I had not noticed that, especially the 3 together. That's terrific. Yeah, we're definitely in a countdown here, and the outer world is going crazy. So thank you for that. So let's take a look at these three sets of 9. Potencies or emanations are pranic in nature. They are that source of energy that enlivens the etheric centers. DK has this quote. Could we get a reader for this quote, please?
Sure, let me recycle them. Anne, can you please read that?
Yes. These solar pranic emanations are the produced effect of the central heat of the sun approaching other bodies within the solar system by one of the 3 main channels of contact. They work within the 4 ethers and are the basis of all physical plane life. The pranic emanations of the etheric body itself plays upon the dense physical body in the same manner as the pranic emanations of the sun play upon the etheric body. It is all one vast system of transmission and of interdependence within the system. All receive in order to give and to pass on to that which is lesser or not so evolved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the 9 sephiroth. So that had to do with these solar emanations, or 9 potencies or emanations. The 9 sephiroth have to do with the different stages of thought form building. If you want to know about this, you go to a treatise on white magic. Quite a bit of that book is about this concept of thought form building. This gets very esoteric, but in a nutshell, the highest 3 sephiroth have to do with the initiating impulse, which DK tells us emanates from the central point of a unit's consciousness. The second group of 3 of these sephiroth have to do with what DK calls the impulse of mind desire. The second aspect, connected with the astral, the impulse of mind desire. The clothing of the thought form in mental and astral substance. And, as you might guess, finally, the third group of sephiroth work with those thought forms that, quote, being clothed in mental and astral matter, passed into objectivity on the physical plane. Okay. The 9 causes of initiation are mentioned exactly once in all the DK books, and with no further explanation. But we might hypothesize that these causes are the source emanations of each of the 9 initiations, the energy that is invoked by the one initiator, to flow through that rod of initiation. So the 9 potencies or emanation, the 9 sephiroths, and the 9 causes of initiation are examples of the subjective nature of the number 9, the energetic orientation of the number 9. We see this idea of the 9-fold applied to other energy sources. For example, electric fire, solar fire, and fire by friction are also each described as 3-fold. But it's not our purpose to enter into a deep analysis of any of these systems, rather to glean from them insight on the nature and quality of the number 9. Okay, humanity belongs to the 4th creative hierarchy, but when the unmanifest hierarchies are counted, we are in fact the 9th hierarchy, which DK stresses is the true number. Let's get a reader for this section, please.
Okay. Victor, can you read for us, please?
Okay. The 4th creative hierarchy is in reality the 9th, and that is why it is called the hierarchy of initiates. We must remember also that 9 is the number of the major initiations of Manas, wherein man becomes a perfect 9, or literally is the number of his hierarchy. There are 9 states of consciousness through which each hierarchy has to pass, and some idea of the significance of this and their relativity can be gained by a consideration of the 9 initiations of the 4th creative hierarchy. Within these 9 distinct expansions through which each life in each hierarchy must pass are to be found lesser expansions.
Thanks, Victor. Okay, these 9 initiations are directly connected to the etheric web of the Earth. It's interesting. DK says the etheric vehicle of the planet was inherited from a former solar system with the purpose or intention in view of its transformation into a network of triangles. In this present system, the result of evolution, as far as the etheric body is concerned, will be the contact established between all 3 points of each triangle, making a 9-fold contact and a 9-fold flow of energy. This is consistent with the fact that 9 is the number of initiation. And by the time the destined number of disciples have taken the 9 possible initiations, this triangular formation of the planetary etheric body will be complete. So we can see this hardwired connection between the initiations and the planetary etheric web. We also can see the very long way that that we need to go in order to complete this transformation of the etheric web, because a destined number of disciples have to take 9 initiations. Okay, DK follows his passage with this illustration that's shown here. This is actually from the book, made up of 4 triangles connected at their points. Because the 3 points of the inner triangle form a common linking point with the outer 3 triangles, we have a total of 9 points, the number of petals in the egoic lotus. Interestingly, the 3 hidden points in the figure correspond to the hidden inner petals of the egoic lotus. In the final stages, the 9 becomes 12. This 9-fold energetic expression, and we're talking about the etheric connectivity, is the template for the conversion of the current square-based planetary etheric web into the future triangular-based web. Can we get a reader for this, please?
Malia. Whoops. It's not letting me. I'm trying to. Hold on. I'm trying to unmute Malia, and I'm having trouble with my.
What about Gabrielle or Martha? Are they available there?
Okay. Hold on. I was having trouble with the my computer, but okay. Go ahead, either Martha or Gabrielle.
Okay. You know, I was just thinking that, we could read. The initial triangle was formed by Sanat Kumara, and we call the 3 energies which circulate through its medium the 3 major rays of aspect. The 4 rays of attribute formed their own triangles, and yet, in a paradoxical manner, they are responsible for the squares through which their energies at this time pass. Thus, the work of transforming the inherited etheric body was begun and has proceeded ever since. In the etheric body of the human being, you have a repetition of the same process in the triangle of energies created by the relationship between the monad, the soul, and the personality.
Thanks, Gabrielle. So let's take a look at the 9th initiation, called the refusals, the highest initiation that can be taken in this solar system. This is as far beyond the Master Dual Kul as his level, the 5th, is beyond us. This is really an inconceivable level of consciousness to us, but nonetheless, some information is given about it. So DK says, in dealing with these higher initiations of which I myself have no experience, there is not for me to do but clarify your minds, and mine also, through the use of ancient phrases and the oral teaching which is permitted to escape into the minds of men. I love that last phrase. Oral teaching which is permitted to escape into the minds of men. Okay, one of these old commentaries from Rays and Initiations reads, the initiate becomes a, quote, fixed or stationary point of light within his chosen place, the place of the Most High, and the point of fire upon the mountaintop. From that point, he will no more go out. DK describes this state of consciousness. Can we get a reader for this, please?
Yes, I'm going to try Malia again. There we go.
The final or ninth initiation is called the initiation of refusal, wherein he rejects, refuses, or repudiates his entire past and enters upon his chosen path entirely free of recollected concepts, but exhibiting to those great lives who welcome him upon the new and untried path all that he is and the essence of his being. Only at the ninth initiation is the human being a full and true expression of divinity. He then realizes that in him all the divine aspects meet. Through them, he is consciously, creatively, and constructively en rapport with the consciousness of the one in whom we live and move and have our being.
Thank you, Malia. That was well read. Okay, two ideas dominate the ninth initiation. The one sound and the concept of total identification with the source of one's being. DK tells us, at the ninth, the one sound of the absolute stands revealed, and its significance is heard and seen. This brings into the consciousness of the initiate somewhat of the energy and power of the one about whom not may be said, or the logos of our solar logos. The unit of consciousness is then perfect, as the logos is perfect, and passes on to work paralleling that of the solar logos. That's the tip-off for just how high this level of consciousness is. Perfection is an often cited attribute of the number 9. It represents the fully realized potential of some cycle of becoming before entering on the new cycle, represented by the 1 in 10, a new decimal place symbolizing a new level of endeavor. Okay, let's look at this idea of the one sound, which is A-U-M. These three letters each stand for a phrase that remains hidden until higher initiations. The phrase beginning with M is made of 4 syllables and sounds the note of matter. The second or form-building aspect. Wait a minute. The phrase beginning with U is made up of 7 syllables and sounds the note of the second or form-building aspect. Said another way, it is through the sounding of these 7 phrases that form building takes place. Finally, the phrase beginning with A is made up of 9 syllables and sounds the note of the first aspect of divinity and produces spiritual synthesis. Referencing these 3 phrases of A-U-M, DK says, we have a correspondence in the 9 initiations, each initiation marking a more perfect union of the self with the all-self, and a further liberation from the trammels of matter. This suggests that at the 5th initiation, one becomes master of the 3rd aspect of divinity. At the 7th, one is master of the 2nd aspect, interesting in light of the fact that the Christ has taken the 7th initiation, and that at the 9th initiation, one becomes one with the first aspect of divinity. Okay, could we get a reader for this section?
Yes. Okay, Tanya.
Okay, can you listen?
Yes, we can listen.
Okay, at the ninth initiation of refusal, the revelation presented to the Master concerns the nature of being and of existence. There is not, I can say to you, which could be in any way explanatory of being, for being is related to that which creates. When that revelation is accorded to the initiate, he for the first time receives his initial contact with what's called in the occult and esoteric books the central spiritual sun.
Thanks, Tanya.
You're welcome.
We see this idea of the perfected Choan represented by the hermit, the ninth arcanum of the Tarot, which represents Virgo, and by the nine cups and the nine of cups and the nine of pentacles of the lesser arcanum, which means fulfillment and refinement, respectively. Sort of lesser aspects of this perfection. The letter associated with the hermit is Yod, which means the open hand of service. You see the Yod in the hermit's hood or hat. Yod is the first letter in the Tetragrammaton and in the word Yakhida, which means the indivisible one or the supreme self. Paul Foster Case says Yod corresponds to the experience of union with the supreme self, and the true I am of the cosmos. This is the same achievement gained at the ninth initiation. 9 and 1 are connected through Mercury, which is the first arcanum of the Tarot. Mercury is the exoteric ruler of Virgo and is exalted in that sign. Intelligent will is the mode of consciousness attributed to the magician, which is this first arcanum, Mercury. Compare Paul Foster Case's description of the hermit with the DK quotes we have read on the ninth initiation. Oh, let's get a reader for this.
Okay, Ecclesia, can you please read that for us?
Okay. The picture shows the hermit alone, standing on a snowy mountain peak, far above the climbing travelers for whom he holds aloft his lantern as a beacon. His white beard shows that he is the most holy ancient one, identified with the primal will. He is the source of all, yet he is also the goal of all endeavor. Every practice in occult training aims at the union of the personal consciousness with the cosmic will, which is the causeless cause of all manifestation.
Thank you, Ecclesia. The case goes on to say, again, 9, the number of this key, is a number of completion. But this completion is inseparable from, and really identical with, the primary idea, which begins the process of manifestation. The hermit stands in darkness because what lies behind her, well, it's a couple ideas connected with this. First of all, what lies behind our conception of supreme reality is incomprehensible to our intellects. Also, the idea that the Virgoan, the gestation period takes place in darkness. The 6-pointed star radiates from the hermit's lamp, stands for Virgo, which is the 6th sign of the zodiac. One of the key words of this arcanum is isolation. At the 9th initiation, the initiate, quote, rejects, refuses, or repudiates his entire past. In both, we have a turning away from any separative identity. It is that stage of consciousness that's represented by the keywords I am, that I am, which is actually the Leo keywords. But, at one time, Leo and Virgo were one sign, and they've always had a kind of 9-1 connection between the two signs. We see the metaphors illustrated in this Arcana, the Hermit, mirrored in Yesod, the 9th sephiroth of the Tree of Life. One difference, however, I have to say, is that Yesod is 9 counting down from Kethor, the Supreme, whereas when we're looking at these, the 9th initiation and the Great Chohan represented by the Hermit, you're looking at 9 counting up. Nonetheless, there's a connection in some ways. Yesod, which means foundation, is the etheric level from which the physical world precipitates. The light of the upper Sephiroth are channeled through Yesod to Malkuth, the 10th and final Sephiroth below. In turn, it is through Yesod that the earth and those initiates who strive are able to connect with the higher Sephiroth. In the Book of Thoth, Aleister Crowley states, this Sephiroth is the seat of the great crystallization of energy. But it takes place very far down the tree, at the apex of the 3rd descending triangle. There's little help from low, unbalanced spheres like Netzach and Hod. What saves Yesod is the direct ray from Sephiroth. This Sephiroth is in the direct line of succession. Sephiroth represents that level of the soul. Okay, let's take a look at the number 9 in mythology. One of the most esoteric examples of the 9 who is also the 1 is the ancient Egyptian Ennead, the hierarchy of gods and goddesses from Heliopolis. The 1 was Ra, who manifested as Ra-Atum. From Ra-Atum came the first polarity, Shu, and the lioness-headed Tefnut. From them issued Nut and Geb. Nut is the sky goddess, it's the overarching feminine aspect there, and Geb is the earth, is related to the earth. He's the, and fertility, he's there below, laying against the earth. And from them, Osiris and Seth, the positive-negative polarity. Finally, Isis and Nephthys. From Osiris and Isis came Horus, the 10th, who is the 1, the son, who is in essence the father. Both Ra, Atum, and Horus are usually depicted with the head of a falcon. It's kind of interesting to note how similar the order of manifestation of the pairs of opposites of the Egyptian Ennead is to the hierarchical structure of the Tree of Life. One other point. Each of the gods and goddesses, called netters in ancient Egypt, carry Ra as part of their name. So we have Ra Osiris, Ra Nephthys, etc., suggesting that they are each aspects of the 1. We have to drop the urge to see these netters as personas. They were rather principles. For instance, Shu, firstborn of Ra Atum, who is exoterically seen as the god of air, is esoterically the netter of space, thus of the first extension into 3 dimensions. So he is that principle that allows the extension into 3 dimensions, into the 3 dimensions of space. Okay. The early American Freemasons based the 9 judges of the Supreme Court on the ancient Egyptian Ennead. We see a similar teaching in China, where 9 is strongly associated with the Chinese dragon, a symbol of the magic and power of deity. There are 9 forms of the dragon. It is described in terms of 9 attributes, and like Ra Atum, it has 9 children, illustrated here. It even has 117 scales, which is 9 times 13. This piece is called The 9 Sons of the Celestial Dragon. The ancient Chinese also created the 9-celled magic square, wherein any 3 horizontal, vertical, or diagonal cells add to 15. Okay. The cosmology of Norse mythology has 9 homeworlds, unified by the world tree called Yggdrasil. Odin, the Norse god who ruled over the 9 worlds, hung for 9 days on this tree in order to bring secret wisdom to humankind. You can just see these runes that are scattered there below his outstretched hands, and this represents the vision that he had of this wisdom. Notice how similar this is to the tarot, the Hanged Man. Also in Norse mythology, the watcher god of Valhalla, Heimdallr, is said to have been born of 9 mothers who also created the known universe. It's the feminine aspect of form building. There are 9 muses in ancient Greek mythology, arranged in 3 sets of 3, the inspirational goddesses of literature, science, and the arts. According to Hesiod, the 9 muses were the 9 daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne. Mnemosyne means memory, a netter if ever there was one. Here, despite this late painting, here Zeus takes the place of Ra-Atum. But this manifested Aeneid is purely feminine. There were 9 magical maidens in Scotland, which this stone circle was named after. In the Arthurian legends, we have 9 female seers and healers who lived on the Isle of Avalon. From Wales, we have 9 armed witches of Caerleon, and 9 maidens who tend the fire below the cauldron of Ceredwen, an early mother goddess figure. We have a French story similar to the sirens in the Odyssey, wherein Corrigan, along with her 9 attendants, lured unwary men to their deaths. In all these examples, 9 personifies the feminine because it represents the greatest plurality and thus the greatest diversity. It is the furthest extension of the archetypal duality of the number 2, but unlike two-ness, it also represents the imminent return to the one, or rather the 10 who is one. In Islam, there are 99 beautiful names of God represented by 99 beads on their rosary. The 100th name is considered unknowable. Michael Schneider states in a Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe, the ancient Hindus developed the mathematics of 9 digits and 0 to regulate the rhythm of their religious poetry, to design temples, and calculate astronomical positions to determine festivals. The American Indian, Aztec, and Mayans all believed that there were 9 cosmic levels to the universe, 4 above and 4 below the earth. Christians recognize 9 angelic choirs in 9 circles of heaven, as well as 9 orders of demons in 9 rings of hell, with the devil confined to the lowest ring. 9 rivers flow into this lowest level, and 9 gates lead into these nether regions. Modern day, we have baseball, which fields 9 players who play for 9 innings. The bottom of the 9th has become a kind of a metaphor for a team's last chance. The etymology of the word 9 is very similar to that for the word nu. 9 in Sanskrit is nava. Nu in Latin is nova. The Romans held a market every 9 days called the Novindine, And a novena is a 9-day period of worship. There are 9 bodily openings and 9 months of pregnancy leading to the new one. 9 has some fascinating mathematical characteristics. Most people learn in grade school that the digits in the product of any number multiplied by 9 add to 9. See how that works? All strings of same number decimal fractions round up to the 9th. Nine is the root of the sum of all the corner angles of any polygon, regular or irregular. Okay, since ancient times, the labyrinth has been a metaphor for one's passage through life and through multiple lives to a higher goal, from the profane or personality-centered outer rings to the sacred center. The 9-pointed X is the basis of many of the most famous labyrinths of the ancient world and in Gothic cathedrals. In labyrinths based on the X, the traveler reverses directions 9 times, cycling in rhythms of left to right, outward and inward, passing through 8 rings before arriving at the 9th, the center. Ancient travelers intoned a particular note for each ring of the labyrinth, thus creating a song unique to each labyrinth. There's a whole field of study right there. Pretty much lost to us, I'm sure. Okay, let's get into our analysis of the 9-sided figure called a nonagon. DK describes the first step of his recommended analysis simply as its exoteric consideration: line, form, and color. By the way, the color on this is mine. The pure form is there to the right. I've colored it to make it clearer to read. At this point, we're not looking for meaning or significance, but rather for a tabulation of physical attributes. Love to have you participate. When called on, briefly describe a single physical attribute. Your observations may seem obvious, like the ones listed here. That's fine. Any ideas that help us to physically define this figure are useful. Okay, I'll start. Sorry for the wonky formatting here. I had to switch to another program in order to keep from crashing my computer, and it threw some of these, some of the formatting off. But, okay. By the way, as others and I describe these attributes, consider preparing for the next step of our analysis by imagining the possible meaning and significance of what's described. You may even want to jot down the ideas that occur to you. Okay, the nonagon is a 9-sided figure with each of its 9 points connected to every other point in the figure. There are 8 connecting lines radiating from each point, making a total of 36 lines. Okay. Any further observations? What other physical characteristics do you see? This is by far the most complex figure that we've considered. So, you know, it can be overwhelming, more so than some of the simpler things we've done. But, you know, give it your best shot and see, you know, and it's fine if it takes you longer to see some of the characteristics. We'll give you a moment, and BL, when somebody raises their hand, let me know.
They have. Martin, please go ahead.
Yeah,
Martin.
hi Francis. Well, when I squint, I see three major triangles creating 3, 3, 3, or 9 points. So
Yes.
you could color it that way and it would be easy to see, but there's definitely three major triangles. And then, of course, each of the 9 points has a division of 3 the way you've colored it, of blue and yellow on 2 sides. So that's a triple division also.
Yes. It's 3 equilateral triangles.
Right. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Which have even angles. So can you see those? All those triple outer points that you see, the yellow, blue, yellow, make up the top of one of those triangles, and they lead to it's so hard to describe geometry with words. But I'm hoping that you can see what Martin has pointed out.
If you look at like what might be 11 if it were 12, 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock, you see the apex of 2 of the triangles, and the other apex is right at the top. Right.
Yeah. And just follow them down, you can see the triangle. I will show this later. Actually inscribe these with a fat white line so that you can see them more clearly. Thanks, Martin.
Okay.
Anyone else? Other aspects? What else do you see? I know it's a very complicated figure.
Yeah, nobody's come forward yet. Here we go. Please go ahead, Tanya.
Well, what strikes me is that I can see an interchange of light and shadow as the colors are placed, and that symbolizes polarity or harmony of polarity. And I'm wondering how come Buddha's star is made of 8 points, and then the 9th comes in, this nonagon, and implying also sort of like preparing us to start over again, So the Bindu is very strong, and it's right in darkness there. Like I said, it's just sheer speculation, but it's extremely rich geometric figure, and I'm just moving. It's like the figure's moving with the shadows in the lighted side, and I'm just trying to figure out what is the message behind this. The outer circle is sort of light blue. Very interesting.
Well, thank you, Tanya. Okay, Tanya, that actually, as is your want, you answered the second part of the analysis, which is, its significance and meaning. That's all right. We get a little peek into where we're going. At this point, we're looking just for physical attributes. But what Tanya just said, actually, what she saw is created by a certain physical aspect, or I would suggest that it is created by a certain physical aspect. Does anybody have an idea what that might be? What physical aspect would create this sense of movement that she was talking about? Anybody have thoughts? Or any other physical characteristics?
Okay, hold on. We actually had several hands up, but I think Scott is the one that's ready to respond to this. Please go ahead, Scott.
Okay. Well, as often happens in these kind of figures, it alternates in form between, in this case, a nonagon and a 9-pointed star as you go in and out. So if you go every point connecting, you have a nonagon. If you do every 2 points, you have a 9-pointed star. If you skip the third point, sorry about that. If you get every third point, you get the equilateral triangles. And every fourth point, you get sort of what astrologers would call the finger of God look.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is a kind of finger of God. It's a.
So as you go in, it just alternates between outward points and nonagons. Outward.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Scott. Anyone else?
Yes, we have several. Malia, please go ahead.
As I'm looking at it, my eye wants to trace around the edges of the dark blue. Well, they look like squares if you don't look too closely. But as you trace around the outside of it, you end up going, it doesn't take you back to where you started.
That's the answer I was looking for.
And it reminds me of the sort of the Celtic knot kind of thing, where the connecting point sort of disappears behind something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interwoven quality, which gives this sense of, it's Escher-like, and that, this quality of you can't get there from here kind of a look. And it suggests, one of the things it suggests is motion, the sense of motion. But as Scott and both Scott and Martin pointed out, that this is made up of both types, both the fixed, because you get that in the equilateral triangles, which are each discrete. They don't move from one to the next. And this line of motion, which interweaves from skipping a point each time and not returning to the original point until you go around twice. Okay, so this is the first form that gives us both these characteristics. Anybody else have ideas about the physical qualities?
Okay, please go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, I started at the center of the form, that open area field built by 9, looks like equilateral triangles. And then from those blue triangles given, if you go on out, you'll see that there are another set of 9 triangles. I thought that's kind of interesting. They just keep spiraling out.
Yeah, these stars are very much interconnected, and so are the nonagons that they surround and form.
What that nonagon is.
What?
I don't know what a nonagon is.
Nonagon is a 9-sided figure. That's what this whole thing is. So the outside edge of this thing, and I should have said that. It's not at all apparent. It's strange where the word N-O-N comes from. It's not what you would think. It's really odd. It's from nuns that used to start their meditation at 3 in the morning and ended up at noon. So it was a 9-hour meditation, and it was called a nana period. So that's where we got it. A nonagon, it's the form that is not the star. It's the simple polygon, which is in this case 9-sided and therefore a nonagon. Thanks, Victor. Anyone else?
Yes, we have. Helen says 9 more smaller equilateral triangles defined by the yellow points and the green points. I think this kind of followed what Victor and Scott was saying. And then Anne says a spiral. Malia says someone in their 90s is called a nonagarian. Yeah. Go for it. Let's see what Scott has to say.
Maybe. I don't know.
We go. Let's see what Scott has to say. Please go ahead, Scott.
Okay. Starting at any point, say the top, if you start looking at the figures that you've colored, they start out as triangles. You go down to the next level, the lighter green is 4-sided, the dark blue is 5-sided. As is the medium green on either side. Go to the dark red, it's 6-sided. Go to the pinks, it's 4 and 3. Interesting numbers.
Yeah, it kind of goes, it starts at 3, goes to 4, goes to 5, goes to 6, and then returns to 4, to 3, right? And then you have one unique figure. Yeah, good observation. Anyone else?
Yes. Oops. She went away. Leah, did you have a comment?
I was going to make the same point that Scott did. The fact that you can find the 3-sided figure 4, 5, 6, and the 9. So I keep looking for the 7 and the 8. Can't find it.
No, there are no 7s and 8s. Yeah, but it's 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9. Thank you, Leah. Anyone else?
No, that's all I've got right now.
Okay, that's really good. You know,
Oops,
this is
hold it.
Hold that phone. Go ahead.
Martin, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. I just see some bow ties there, right above the red, all the way around. 2 little triangles meeting, creating 9 bow ties, looking like 2 triangles meeting at a point.
Yeah.
I don't know what it symbolizes, but there it is.
And then you have this sort of punk bow ties that go around the central figure.
Bow ties. Yeah, right. It looks like a high school prom is what it looks like.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, right. Yeah, in fact, if you look at the no, we won't go there. I have to wait till next year to get the humorous aspect of the nonagon. Anyone else is with physical attributes?
Anne says the outer circle and inner. I don't. Let me unmute her. Please clarify, Anne.
Hello. There must be an outer circle. The nonagon must be inside the circle and must have an inner circle in the inner, the dark blue.
Absolutely.
There must be 2 circles.
There are. There's even more than that. But you're good to point them out. There are a number of circles connected within. The most obvious ones are the circle that the entire figure would fit inside, and the circle suggested by that inner nonagon. Thank you, Anne. Good point.
Thank you.
In fact, it's essential. Anyone else have any thoughts about the exoteric consideration? Go ahead.
Go ahead, please, Arrest.
When I look at the yellow points, I see the yellow points being part of a yod and coming together, 2 yods coming together, almost like a pincer. And you've got a series of pincers. Then if you take one leg of that pincer and you go across, you then have a divider. So you've got this pincer form, then you've got the divider. If you go from the one yellow point, a straight line to the other point, you've got a opening. So you've got a sort of a visual set of potential movements of calipers, dividers. So it's that sort of thing that I find interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of duality in this figure, and that's Orest just pointed one of them out. That you're moving from, like, if you take that, see the dark blue points that extend all the way to the periphery there, like at the very top, that's embraced by the 2 yellow. The 2 yellow is what Orest was calling the pincer. And then if you follow it down, it ends in duality. So you have this singular and then the dual opposite. So, and there's other dualities in this. For instance, just the fact of stars and nonagons is another duality. And there's others that I'll point out later. That's a good point, Orest. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Malia says that she really likes the way that you colored the parts. They're vibrant and they highlight the individual parts. So.
Well, thank you. Any more thoughts? Okay.
Martin?
Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
In terms of what Orest was saying, the pincer, I just note that there's 3 points in the pincer, so that's 9 times 3, which is 27, which adds up to 9.
Right, and you have that, in your original observations too, which is the equilateral triangles.
Yes.
you have 9 times 3, right? Now, of course, they overlap because really there's only 9. But if you look at each individual form and count it discretely, then, yeah, you have, it's the interrelated parts that create the higher numbers. Thanks, Martin.
Okay.
And
anyone else?
Victor.
Yeah. Yes, Victor.
Yeah, I was noticing that inner field with the outer, the light blue and the deep dark black in my screen. I noticed that the planes on the outer field is a few degrees off from the inner circle. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, one of the inner points, if you draw a straight line out to the outer point, it bisects a line not at the point.
Right. Yeah, and one easy way to describe that phenomenon is just that the inner nonagon is reversed compared to the outer nonagon. So all the angles will be not parallel to the outer. Folks, we're going to need to move on. The time is really flying by. I don't know what happened. So I need to get into the next part of this. The nonagon is, these are, here's some additional physical attributes. And some of these you brought forward. I present them again in order to share my illustrations with you. It's really good work. Thank you. The nonagon is a closed figure with 153 interior shapes made up of 12 types of shapes with either 9 or 18 instances of each shape. This illustration numbers only those shapes with 9 instances, so it wouldn't get so cluttered you couldn't tell what was going on. The 4 unnumbered areas are mirrored shapes, and thus have 18 instances of each. You could say, from another point of view, they're all unique shapes. But you can see those mirrored, unnumbered shapes are actually identical. They're just reversed, right? Whereas the numbered shapes are all unique shapes, okay? All these shapes surround a 154th shape at the center, which, of course, has only 1 instance. 6 of these types are triangular, something Scott brought out. 3 are 4-sided, 3 are 5-sided, and the central shape is 9-sided. There are 123 points of intersection within the figure, 132 including the 9 outer points. There are 4 horizontal lines that divide the nonagon into 3 horizontal 4-sided segments and 1 3-sided segment, which, like any other feature we may choose to highlight, can be found at each of the 9, originating from each of the 9 points, or the 9 orientations of the nonagon. Everybody get the sense of what that's about? Okay, thus the 36 lines of the nonagon are each horizontal to 3 other lines, making 9 sets of 4 horizontal lines, which adds to the 36. Whereas connecting all the points of a pentagon produces a single star, and connecting all the points of a heptagon produces 3 stars, connecting all the points of a nonagon produces no less than 6 interior stars. The innermost star embraces a reversed nonagon at the center of the figure. Next out is a reversed 9-pointed star that embraces the same central nonagon. The lines of this star, made up of 3 equilateral triangles, also create the innermost star. The next star out is also reversed. And it embraces a, wait a minute, I just got lost here. Okay, next star out is also reversed and mirrors the shape in the inmost star. The next star out is made up of acute angles that reach all the way out to the periphery of the figure. All the other 5 stars are contacted by this star. The negative space enclosing this star is made up of 9 equilateral triangles. This is followed by a star that is made up of 3 equilateral triangles, the one Martin pointed out, an upright version of the second star from the center. And like that second star, its lines create a companion star. Finally, the outer star embraces a large nonagon and mirrors the shape and orientation of the inmost star. This gives us 3 types of stars. 2 of these types are created by interwoven lines, like all the stars in the 5 and 7 pointed figures. And one of these types is created through the juxtaposition of 3 equilateral triangles. There's 2 stars, 1 type. The outer 3 stars together cover all the lines within the figure, except the outer nonagon. There are 4 nonagons within the figure. These 4 plus 6 stars make a total of 10 overlapping figures. 12 circles can be drawn within and around this nonagon. There are 54 equilateral triangles in this figure. 27 separate and discrete triangles are outlined in dark blue on the left side and in the middle. And when rotated, there are 9 instances each of the triangles shown on the right. Okay. As complex as the angles may seem, they are all divisible by 20 degrees. As an example, I've determined the angles across the midline of the figure, where every angle between 20 degrees and 140 degrees is represented in 20-degree increments. All the angles in the figure are one of these 7 angles, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, and 140. There are literally hundreds of overlapping triangles as just examples, but you can find that many more in a second. And hundreds of overlapping shapes that look like pyramids in perspective, these 4-sided figures that Scott pointed out. Though there are no right angles in this image, a cross marking the center of the figure can be inscribed using the 4 intersecting points shown on the left. The center can also easily be found by drawing lines from any 2 outer points to their opposing interior intersections. Okay, DK separates the next stage of our analysis into 2 parts as follows. A comprehension in the astral emotional body of its quality, the reaction of a sensitive response to the impact of its qualitative nature. And second, a conceptual consideration of its underlying idea of what it is intended to teach, of the intellectual meaning it is intended to convey. So in the interest of time, we'll consider these 2 steps at the same time. When sharing, you're welcome to speak to either the emotional or conceptual aspects of the nonagon. So, considering the list of physical attributes, this one got really whacked by the formatting, as well as those you have brought forth, what quality, significance, and or meaning can we ascribe to the nonagon? Tanya started us off with this. Here's one example each based on quality or significance and on conceptual meaning. In terms of significance, when I look at the nonagon, the 6 stars evoke the sense of progressive inner to outer radiance. In terms of conceptual meaning, the 5 stars that can be drawn with one continuous line suggest mutability and the mutable astrological signs, whereas the 1 star made up of, or the 2 stars made up of 3 equilateral triangles suggests the quality of the fixed signs. The 2 stars made of equilateral triangles are there to the right. The other 4 are to the left. Okay, those are my examples of what we're looking for. Any further ideas on the quality, significance, and or meaning of the nonagon? As you're thinking about this, you may wish to consider our list of physical attributes, if you can read this tiny writing. I'll give you a minute to review. Just raise your hand when you're ready to share.
Okay, Francis?
Yeah.
Malia had made a comment earlier when you said you needed to move on, and I actually think it kind of fits in this category. So what she said was huge potential energy in this figure. Looks like it will begin rotating any second now.
Yeah, that definitely belongs to this category. That belongs to significance. It's the emotional response, how it feels, and absolutely, it does have a, let me get back up here. Oops, wrong button. There we go. It does have an inherent quality of motion, doesn't it? Especially, I find more so in the color version. The other has more of the sense of a web. But anyway, yes. Yes, imminent sense of motion.
Okay, and Orest has a comment. Please go ahead, Orest.
Taking the bow tie idea as a point of focus, what I perceive is more to be a series of planes. So you take the bow tie and you've got the continuation from that center, a line, and then you've got the other line, so you've got 2 planes intersecting. But somehow when you try to find a point of holding that grasp, you can't seem to find it. There seems to be an illusion of something, but it's not totally totally present. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of 3-dimensional aspects that are suggested, but then when you try to find the form, somehow you're distracted away from it.
Yes, exactly. That's a characteristic of the interweaving quality of one of the types of stars. Most of the stars, 4 of the 6. And you really see that if you see the outermost star, which is outlined by the light in dark blue, not the lightest blue on the outside, but the next shades in. If you try to follow that form around, it really you get that sense of how it's very Escher-like, and it doesn't resolve into a specific form, and yet it suggests some type of form. Yeah, thank you, Orest. Anyone else?
Yes, we have several hands up, so let's see. Please go ahead, Scott.
I'm trying to find in the figure the breakdown of the number 9 that the different ones we're familiar with, and it's not easy to find. For instance, if you want to look at this 9 in terms of a 4-1-4, and find that. How do you find a 1-3-5? How do you find a 2, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
Those all are 9, and they're important breakdowns of the number 9 in a way of conceptualizing how you build to a 9 or how a 9 is made, what it's made up of, how to look at it. And it's very difficult when you, in this pattern, to see any of those emerge.
That's interesting. I didn't explore it from that angle to see, if I could find that you could say the divisors or the elements of the number 9. That would be an interesting pursuit to see if you could find a cohesive way of seeing that. It's as I'm looking here, I'm not quickly. I'm not seeing that either.
What you see is, what you come up with is the Enneagram 9, I don't know if you're going to get to that.
Yeah, we are.
Gurdjieff's 9, you can see that in this and following the patterns around, but it's very hard for me right off to see a 4-1-4, 2-3-4, 1-3-5.
Yeah, the 1-9 is present everywhere, the 1 and 9. But the other divisions, not so much. You're right. That's interesting. Yeah, just that the lack of that is interesting. Yeah. Good point. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, we have another hand, but first let me read some of the comments we've got here. Helen says, inevitably of spiraling progress indicated by the alternating reversal of the stars and the nonagons.
Yeah, there's a strong sense of the spiral. And again, that's created by the interweaving. If you start at the top and you follow it around, you go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then you don't get back to 1. You go 2, 4, 6, 8, right? So it spirals between the odds and evens in that way. And if you were to, if we were to see this as like we were looking straight down on a figure, if we could look to the side of it and pull it up like a slinky, we can imagine that at least those stars that are connected through interweaving, the 4 stars that have that quality, they would just pull up. Like it would be an interesting project to pull it up and see the this sense of 3-dimensional layering. So thank you for that. Anyone else?
Clesia says there is a sense of balance within the duality, equalized balance of force within movement of energy.
Okay, hold that thought, because that is a fundamental of the concept of the Enneagram, and so hold that, Clesia, and we'll be looking at that when we go there. But it's important and interesting that it is fundamental to the nonagon. The reason I started with the nonagon and not the Enneagram, which is what I had advertised, at least in the first mailing, is because this is the essential figure. The Enneagram is a man-created, or inspired system that is based on this figure. But we have to start with the figure itself. Anyone else?
Yes, we have quite a few. Anne says, without the color, it gives me a sense of a sphere. It reminds me of Earth and the ley lines. It also gives me a symbol of egoic lotus.
Yeah, it certainly is. Being 9-sided is a natural symbol for the egoic lotus, isn't it? We can see these, the yellow, blue, yellow outer as petals of that lotus. That's one way of looking at it. Absolutely. And I see your idea of the sphere. It even looks like the 3-dimensional curve is going around, the sphere. It's good observation. Anyone else?
Yes, let's go to Martin.
Yeah, hi, Francis. The Enneagram is there, but do you know about Marco Rodin's vortex-based mathematics, where basically he's discovered what he might call essential numerology, and he basically says that it's the key to 0-point energy, and it has to do with the difference between doublings and triplicities. And I'm not going to go into it here, but anyone who's looking at 9 really should look up vortex-based mathematics. Enneagrams are tied very often to psychology, but he basically is a Baha'i, and studying the Arabic name of God, he came up with the most amazing, what we might call, avenue through numbers to 0-point energy. So I just wanted to mention Marco Rodin.
Marco Rodin. Thank you.
R-O-D-I-N. Right.
Okay. Rodin.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yes. Please go ahead, Leah. You're on self-mute. There you go.
Thank you. Within that, within the 9ness, you find the progressive movement of the 3 fires, from rotation to spiral to the central eye that is moving us forward through space.
Really good point there. Yeah. You have all 3. You have the mutable, the fixed, and the cardinal aspect. Another way of saying the same thing. Direct rotary motion, spiralic motion, the direct motion, mutable, fixed, and cardinal. Excellent. So if I may expand, the 4 types of stars that move in an interweaving pattern represent the mutable, or the rotary. Well, actually, it's spiralic. That's interesting. There's a little reversal there. And then the 3 stars, which are equilateral, there's actually 2 stars that use equilateral triangles, would seem to actually suggest rotary motion, even though that's also a kind of reversal. And then the central nonagon represents the direct motion because it's oriented towards the central point, which is hidden. Yeah, thank you for that. Every one of these is a whole field of discussion, and we're just flying through here trying to at least touch on these points. Anyone else?
Yes, Victor, please go ahead. You're on self-mute. There.
Yes. I see the sphere in like a 2-dimensional representation of what we normally think of a sphere. But what I have difficulty visualizing is where this thing would rotate without a wobble. And also it would be interesting to be inside of this figure in a spheroidal thing and look at the spaces from within. It would be interesting. Like the ones that we see here colored, that's like a cross-section. It would be a totally different experience from within. Yeah,
it sure would be, indeed. And what would that figure be? How would you construct it? It's, very interesting thought. Thank you. Thank you, Victor. Anyone else?
Nope, that's it for right now.
Okay, I'm going to close the door right there because we're running out of time. Take you through my ideas on this. Okay, the nonagon could be seen to represent the 9 signs of the Virgoan gestation period. Remember that the 9th tarot arcana represents Virgo. In this context, there's a strong sense of emanation from the central hub. It feels like the figure is self-created from the inside out, the sun transforming the mother. Geometrically, it seems as though the hidden central point first manifests as the inner nonagon, the Ennead, the 9 faces of the one reality, and then moves in progressive stages into greater diversity through all the surrounding forms. The unique central shape, unique, that is, as a discrete shape, is both the first shape when counting from the center out and the 154th shape when counting from the periphery to the center. Since 154 numerologically reduces first to 1 and 9, then to 1 and then to 1 from 1 and 9. 1 and 154 together represent a kind of alpha omega. Again, we have the Ouroboros metaphor. There are no 3D and very few two-dimensional figures that are dominated by the number 9. Therefore, if there is a geometrical figure that represents the 9 initiations, this is very possibly it. All the more so, given the fact that there's a combination of 9 nonagons and stars, or actually there are 10 nonagons and stars within the figure. If we accept this as a working hypothesis, the entire figure represents a journey through the fifth kingdom towards the point at the center through 9 successive initiations. Each of the 4 nonagons reverses, thus representing a dual polarity, which draws the initiate from the periphery to the center of the figure. In this hypothesis of the 9 initiations, the outer nonagon represents the commitment to seek the higher way of discipleship and personality integration. First initiation is symbolized by the outermost star, whose periphery represents mastery of the physical plane and birth into the fifth kingdom. Second initiation is symbolized by the second nonagon from the periphery. It's characterized by a mastery over the astral plane and thus reveals a deeper penetration into both the figure and the fifth kingdom. The third initiation is symbolized by the 3 equilateral triangles that make up the second star. This is particularly apropos symbol for the third initiation, as the 3 equilateral triangles represent triple mastery over the mental, astral, and physical planes. Continuing with this hypothesis, the fourth initiation, called the crucifixion, is symbolized by the 3rd star in from the periphery. During this initiation, the initiate moves off the fixed cross and onto the cardinal cross. The great 5th initiation, called the revelation, is represented by the 1st star whose center embraces the innermost nonagon, signifying an entirely new vista of opportunity. As DK says, the way is revealed to the initiate in a new light and with an entirely different significance, for he emerges at the 5th initiation into the light of day. This star reaches all the way to the outer nonagon, the physical plane, thus symbolizing the far-reaching influence of the master and his ashram. With the 6th initiation, called the decision, the initiate enters the 2nd nonagon, and thus moves beyond the influence of the hierarchy and into the sphere of influence of Shambhala. Here the Chohan is faced with the choice of 6 cosmic paths. Now working with the potency of Shambhala, the 7th and 8th initiations are symbolized by the final 2 stars whose core is the inner nonagon. And finally, at the 9th initiation, this innermost nonagon is entered, and the initiate, quote, repudiates his entire past and enters upon his chosen path. Okay, another way to look at this figure is through a particular interconnection of the 9 points of the outermost nonagon. Called an Enneagram, this figure was introduced in the West by Gurdjieff, who claimed to have learned it in a monastery in Central Asia. Gurdjieff, I think it's pronounced. One use of the Enneagram is to reveal the purpose of an event or a cycle of time in terms of its essential principles, and to provide a meaningful interaction between the components of this event or cycle. The construction of the Enneagram begins with an equilateral triangle at point 3, 6, and 9. These 3 points represent the active, passive, and neutral principles of an event. And was it Ecclesia, I think, that brought this up? Somebody did, about this idea of the active, passive, and neutral. The passive point represents the element that will undergo transformation. The active point is that which brings about this transformation. And the neutral element is the environment, or that which allows this pair of opposites to interact in a constructive way, thus transforming them into a new unity, moving from 9 to 1. The other 6 points of the Enneagram represent the steps that progressively link the 3 points of the equilateral triangle. But these 6 are also linked in a way that is not just clockwise, a clockwise path around the circle. The way they are linked is determined by the heptad, the 7. When we divide 1 by 7, we get a series of repeating numbers. The fraction, when you put 7 into 1, is 0.142857, 1428571, 1428557 ad infinitum, which creates the pattern which overlays the equilateral triangle and describes both a path of continuous motion and of specific interrelationship. Okay? This specific interrelationship can be illustrated by another use of the Enneagram, representing a model of 9 interconnected personality types. This is by far the most famous use of the Enneagram. As you can see, this system is much too complex to cover during this webinar. It's so much fun, but we don't have time. But I do want to talk a bit about the interconnectivity between the numbers. In this system, a person's basic type is modified by the personality dynamics of the 2 adjacent types. These 2 types are often called wings. A person of the 3 personality type, for example, is understood to have points 2 and 4 as their wing types. Okay? In addition, the connecting lines that follow 142857, you can see it in the little figure at the top, just following around, 142857, back to 1, provide 2 additional sources of personality modification called the security and stress points, or points of integration and disintegration. I actually prefer the latter. They are shown in the last 2 columns of this chart. These stress and security points are the types connected by the lines of the Enneagram figure that are believed to influence a person in more adverse or relaxed circumstances. According to this theory, someone classed as a type 1, so look at the first line, that's the reformer, and then go all the way over, may begin to think, feel, and act more like a type 4 when stressed, and more like a type 7 when relaxed. Thus, every type is influenced by 4 other types. The 2 on either side, right, like 3 would be influenced by 2 and 4, and then by this pattern around the Enneagram. Now, there's a sub-discipline of the personality Enneagram called the spiritual Enneagram, which uses the same geometry but extends the basic types into their more spiritual counterparts. Here's an example from the spiritualenneagram.com, which I recommend you go look at. As you can see, we just barely scratched the surface of this, but at least it's an introduction, and it's very relevant to this figure because it's subjective, and it suggests process of growth. So I explore you to urge Enneagram on your own. There's really a lot of good info online, including this URL I mentioned, which is the spiritualenneagram.com. Okay, we're way over, but we're just going to forge ahead here. Let's take a look at the next stage in DK's analysis, which is the stage of synthetic grasp of the purpose of a symbol, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan, and of its true unified intent. Stage is not about attributes, rather it has to do with synthesis and unity, synthetic purpose and unified intent. Just as the physical stage, the first stage, has to do with the physical plane, and the second with emotions and the astral and the feeling quality, the third with the mental, this stage suggests we apply our intuition and thus lift our consciousness to even higher levels to discern the purpose of this symbol. Notice too that this stage is threefold. The stage of the synthetic grasp of the purpose of a symbol, of its place in an ordered manifesting plan, and of its true unified intent. So, what is the synthetic purpose or unified intent of the nonagon, and what is its place in an ordered manifesting plan? What single purpose characterizes this figure? Anyone have any ideas? These are always the biggest questions, certainly the biggest ones that I ever face. And so it's difficult to expand to even try to imagine answering these. What is the place of this figure in an ordered manifesting plan? But where fools rush in, or angels fear to tread, I should say. Where angels fear to tread, any ideas? Let me know when you get a response, BL, and
Okay.
Take your time.
I have a couple of responses here. Victor, please go ahead. You're on self-mute. There.
The thing that came to my mind was group consciousness.
Yeah, the interdependence of these figures for their very existence suggests group. In a way, this figure doesn't come together unless the components, from a certain point of view, are sacrificing their individual discreteness for the good of the whole. So I think you're right on there. It's a great symbol for group work. Good one, Victor. Anyone else?
Yes, Malia says unity in diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And Ecclesia says sacred shape that our earth will take on when the plan has been completed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's both in a way say the same thing. Both of your ideas are the same, which is that, the idea that 9, which represents that ultimate diversity, and you could say our present day level of absolute diversity, has the potential and is moving towards the one, which is represented by the whole figure, as well as the goal, you could call it indigo, the goal of endeavor, which is the color of the central nonagon. Anyone else?
Yes, we've got a couple of more here. Please go ahead, Arrest.
The idea of the torus or the toroidal sphere, the idea of fractality or fractals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, finding the whole within the part. We see that in just the extraordinary multiplication of the figures, and yet how each figure is a part of a greater whole. We have equilateral triangles within greater equilateral triangles, which in turn are in even greater equilateral triangles. And yet all essential to the completion of the larger figure. This gets back to what Victor was saying. That it's represents a kind of group endeavor. Thank you, Arrest. Anyone else?
Yes. Please go ahead, Martin.
Yes, I would say it's the omnipotence of the one initiator, and it's captured in the idea that you had there of the one at the center, or going the other way, the 1, 5, 4, because 5 and 4 are the two numbers that add up to 9, which is the initiate, and 1 is the initiator. So the 1 initiates the whole thing, and the 1 initiates each initiate through the marriage of 5 and 4. So it's pretty potent stuff.
Yeah, I like that about 5 and 4. That can be further explored because 4 is the form world, 5 is mind. Initiations take place at least the initial initiations take place on the plane of mind, in the higher mental. So you have a fusing of 5 and 4 there, right? Through the one, called one initiator. Really good point. Thank you, Martin.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yes, Anne says the interaction of the 7 rays on the human mechanism, esoteric psychology in a symbol.
Interesting. Yeah. Certainly, if we were to further analyze this figure, and do you get the sense? I certainly have this. Unlike some of the figures we've analyzed, that we just kind of gone through the first door, and that if we were to, all move in together for a year, that we could, start to gain some insight on the higher levels of this figure's meaning. It's just so profound. It has so many qualities and layers to it. So certainly the 7th, which is also a complete forms of completion, is part of the inherent quality of this figure, the 7 rays. Anybody else?
Yes. Please go ahead, Scott.
I think any consideration of 9 goes back to where you started. The key word is the DK keeps bringing up again and again and again with them. Do with humanity, the number of humanity. It deals with initiation, human initiation in particular, and consciousness. 9 is the number of consciousness, human consciousness. It has to be a blend of those 3.
I think too. Yeah. I think ultimately, you can never, you have to remember, these figures, and this one included, is not made up. It's not something man fabricated. It's inherent in the figure. If you take a 9-sided figure and you connect its lines, this is what you get. So it stands at a causal level compared to any creations from the mind of man. Therefore, it has the potential to represent something as expansive as what Scott was suggesting, the subjective side, the consciousness aspect of man. And if you remember, that was the number of our hierarchy, and in a sense, the number of man as perfected, because he, through the 9th initiation, achieved the number of the hierarchy to which he belongs. And I think this is represented in this symbol.
Also, the idea we touched upon that's quite mysterious in its own way, I think, is the reference in 9 to the triple Tau. The triple Tau here is, I think, is one of the keys that gets into deeper on 9 as well, and how that's represented in different secret societies and sacred works throughout history.
Yeah, this is where you have the 3 times 3 again, this threefold quality that demonstrates as 9. The 3 essences, and the 3 sephiroth that nonetheless demonstrate through 9. And I think the inherent, when you look at the Tao, the actual formation of that figure, you have that threeness, and then you have the 3 of them making the triple. So yeah, that's a we can have a webinar just on the triple Tao.
And it's a number of relative perfection, because it relates, as you were pointing out, 9 going to 10, but it also pointing out the fact that it's 9 out of 12 of the signs. It does that in a couple different ways, of taking out the first 3 signs, or Leo and Libra and Capricorn. So it's part of a whole, and yet it's a whole in and of itself.
Yeah, that's right. You could take this whole, and I resisted the impulse, but I could just tell you about it, which is to take this whole and shrink it down and put it in the center. And you would have a receding line that would draw you forwards ever through the center. And so the idea being that, once the 9th initiate steps into this inner nonagon, and takes one of his 6 paths, that he's entered an entirely new nonagon, right? And that's fractal in the sense that it continues to go and go and go. And that could represent the consciousness of ever more expansive levels, starting with planetary levels, and then you get to solar, and then you get to the one about whom not may be said, and etc. But we don't know that that's true. That you may go into this nonagon and there's something else altogether different. So who knows? Okay. Any other thoughts?
Yes, we do. Malia said pretty much what you and Scott were just talking about, the mystery of being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we got something here from Arrest. Please go ahead.
The idea of looking at those funny type of telescopes which have those segments in, and as you turn the telescope thing, yes, and you start seeing different patterns. So this has got that suggestion of your focus moves at another point and then something shifts. So you fix the coloration to a certain extent, but I'd like to see it as a moving, mobile-y type, just the idea of that the changing nature of the parts.
Yes. Yeah. The idea of a wheel rotating on itself, is suggested here because you have 3 levels of rotation just indicated by one of the stars. But what is indicated by that interweaving star? It's just there's so much potential in terms of the movement, and like you, I see that it wants to extend itself into 3 dimensions, and yet I think, as Victor said, what would that look like? I mean, you keep, because there's that disconnect that keeps you from being able to actually formulate what that form would look like. I'd love to have a kaleidoscope that showed this as in one of its stages. Thanks, Orest. Anyone else?
Yes, we've got a couple of more comments here. Martha and or Gabriel say 9 is the way outward into form and the way back out of form altogether.
Yeah, indeed. At this stage, because we've, in a sense, turned the corner, 9 represents, through the 9 initiations, very specifically the way back in. Of course, that what I did with the 9 initiations, pure fancy, but it's maybe not. Maybe there's something inherent in the form, which is the most 9-based form that we know of, that has to be associated with the initiations. Now, whether they are the ones that I happen to indicate, that's probably not actually. But it's one way of looking at it to start thinking in that direction. Yeah, thank you.
And we have a comment from Anne. She says, a diamond and the way the light interacts.
Oh, yeah.
The diamond in 3 dimensions leads to the 1 point. The 10 equals the 1.
That's nice, Anne. The one thing, though, you would never see this because you can't make these facets. You can't actually create this because it interweaves. So if, for instance, you take the light blue triangle at the top that includes the 5 lesser triangles. So that's one facet. And then you go around to the next one to the right, and you go around the next one at the bottom. You think you're in pretty good shape, right? But then you realize, wait a minute. Then, okay, you go one more round, but then when you come back towards the top, you're crossing the one that you had above, that you initially made. So there's an optical illusion. So it's like an etheric or a higher form level diamond. Yeah, I would love to see that. And that also brings, what we've all been talking about, which is this idea of it extended in 3 dimensions. But I think it wouldn't be in 3 dimensions. It would be probably in 5th dimension or higher that you would actually be able to realize this as a, quote, form, unquote, beyond the 2-dimensional. Good thought, Anne. Thank you.
Anne adds that with diamonds, the masters keep the energy inside.
Yeah, this both contains and radiates, doesn't it? That's one thing I really love about this. It's become a favorite of mine. Is that the more I consider it, the more I look at it. And when I look back at the 7-sided figure now, and it's 3 inner stars, it looks so simple. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's such a simple form by comparison. Once you adjust to this complexity, that is.
And she adds again, and that the egoic lotus is our energy.
And the egoic lotus what?
Is our energy.
Thank you for those, Anne. That's great. Anyone else?
No, that's all we've got right now.
Okay. This is way, way, way over. Let me read you what I have. Here's my idea as to the synthetic purpose of the nonagon. Whereas the heptagon is a 7-fold matrix suggesting objective constitution, the 9-fold nonagon suggests and possibly even maps the subjective or consciousness aspect. DK says 9 is the number of man. Just a sentence straight out of TCF. From an esoteric perspective, there is only unity in what HPB calls the numbers, or the 9-fold, which represents consciousness in all its variety. The secret doctrine states, it is the voice of the Lord's Sephiroth, the numbers, for he is 1 and 9. As unity, he begins the numbers, with which he has nothing in common. The return path from this plurality is ruled by the number 9. The geometry of the nonagon depicts this journey. Do the energies that make up this consciousness aspect flow in accordance with this figure? Very possibly, since 9 so strongly conditions this figure, but we have no way of knowing for sure. At any rate, the nonagon is an apt symbol for the 9 progressive initiations. Okay, final step is identification with the quality and purpose of the symbol as it is illuminated by the mind held steady in the light. This final stage brings to activity the brain as well as the mind. So let's attempt to identify with, rather than merely reflect on, the quality and purpose of the nonagon. We'll take exactly 1 minute to do this, starting now. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar. And I'm really sorry I kept you so long. This has been the longest of all the webinars at 2 hours. During the next session, we'll take a look at the 10th and final sephiroth called Malkuth, the 10th Tarot Arcana known as the Wheel of Fortune, and the Tetractys, illustrated here. For those of you who have been following the reading, take a look at the chapters on the number 10 in the Key to the Universe and in A Beginner's to Constructing the Universe. Today's visualization is from stanza 11 of the stanzas of Zahn in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. We'll begin and end with an Om. Stanza 11. The great triangles in their just arrangement hold hid the secret of the wheel of life. The cosmic fire radiates as directed from the second sphere, controlled by the ruler of the merging ray. The cohorts of the third encircling sphere in varied ranks mark out the lesser threes. The wheel of life still moves within the form. The devas of the fourth connect the 35 and blend them with the central 49. Above they work, seeking to merge the whole. Upward they strive, who in their myriad forms revolve within the wheels of lesser magnitude. The whole is one, yet on the lower spheres only the form appears. They seem in their divisions more than can be grasped or met. The many circulate. The forms are built, become too firm, are broken by the life, and circulate again. The few revolve, holding the many in the heat of motion. The one embraces all and carries all from great activity into the heart of cosmic peace. Okay, that's it for today. Don't forget to donate a few bucks to the Moria Federation at moriafederation.com, which will help pay the yearly fee for this GoToMeeting account that makes these webinars possible. Thanks to Brett, these webinars are available on makara.us. And thank you again, BL, for your continued invaluable assistance. Thank you all for attending. Hope to see you again at our next session, which will be on August 21st. Now, this next session will be the second to last in this webinar series on sacred geometry. We'll be covering the number 10, followed by the number 12 with a passing glance at the number 11. And then that will be the end of the series. So I hope to see you all there for the last two. Okay, bye for now.
Good night, everybody.